Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad you could join us for this uh, webinar session from MMFM. And one of the things that I want to say is thank you for all the people who attended the conference, who had seen the previous version of this video. This is the long version of how to pitch. Um, it was a tremendous success. We've heard wonderful things on social media, so we're thankful for your participation in this event. Now, as always, we want to bring uh, to the forefront the people who make this possible. MMFM is an initiative of Camacol, the Latin Chamber of Commerce in the United States, and the animation incentive is itself an initiative of MMFM. And it could not be brought to you without the very generous support of our really good friends at Career Source South Florida, the City of Miami District 1, the Miami-Dade Public Library System, and the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs. If you will recall, both from the panel at MMFM and from the snippet from a previous webinar that covered pitching, pitching is kind of one of the most important aspects because it doesn't matter how good your project is. If you can't convince somebody that it's good, it doesn't matter how good it is. So this is a longer form video on pitching your project, MMFM's basic guidelines to a successful pitch. And we hope that this is up as a companion video to the What's in Your Package panel from MMFM a week ago yesterday. So a great pitch has inherent power. And one example of thousands of examples is in 1975, Sylvester Stallone had lost his car, was down to like just $100 in the bank, and even had to take his dog back to the pet store to get a refund. But he would not sell his script for Rocky unless he could play Rocky. And at this moment, he's a nobody. He's done one, TV movie of the week. That's all he's got as far as fame goes. And nobody should have said yes to him. But his pitch was so strong that eventually he sold it with the caveat that, hey, I get to play Rocky. And that's just the way it's going to be. And they said yes. And just as you know, if you read the trades, just this week, I'm blanking on the name of the project, but you could Google it, a naked, quote unquote, a naked pitch got bought. Naked meaning they have no attachments beyond the producers of the project, no stars, no director, no nothing. The pitch and the underlying project, let's be sort of clear on that, was so strong that they bought it. Okay, it's a Netflix project, so Google that and we'll see what it goes. Anyway, so with his pitch and the quality of the script that Sylvester Stallone had written, he was able to finally sell it the way he wanted sold. And now Rocky is probably, one of the top 10, maybe top 5 film franchises in history. And by the way, he got his dog back. So, pitch basics. Whether you have an elevator ride with somebody or a 30 minutes in the room, which is pretty rare these days, a properly executed pitch works. Parentheses, if the underlying project is good too. A spectacular pitch on a terrible project is probably not going to work. Although a great pitch for a terrible project is more likely to work than a terrible pitch for a great project. Exhibit A, Sharknado. Anyway, a properly executed pitch is your path to yes. It's not the yes, but you're well on your way to yes. In a hallway, at an in-person meeting, the properly structured and executed pitch for a quality project will get results. It's mathematical. But first, you got to warm up. You got to get your energy up. You have to put yourself in a positive, even joyful frame of mind. Do whatever pumps you up. What pumps up person A does not necessarily have to work for person B. Do what gets you going. Whatever gets you jazzed, whatever gets you excited, whatever gets you motivated, whatever gets you raring to go, that's what you need to do. Listen to whatever that music is, whether it's new wave, it's disco, whatever, or watch whatever clips get you going. I personally really enjoy watching the Tom Cruise clips from Tropic Thunder, but I'm weird. So that puts me in a frame of mind. You do you. Get your blood going with positivity, not jittery. We're not talking about, 18 espressos jittery. Just get your blood going. You are raring to go. You're just can't wait to do this. And then at the last second before you start, this is my personal experience. I channel Beetlejuice and I go, it's showtime. And off we go. But because a pitch is a performance, you're going to have to go into wardrobe and makeup. And even if you're on Zoom, wear an outfit, the whole outfit, that is the one that gets you the compliments. Obviously, if you're a creative person, you're thinking in the business casual realm. We're not talking, white tie and tails if you're a guy, ball gowns if, none of that. Channel whatever gets you the compliments. Whenever people say, you look terrific today, that's what I want you to wear on your Zoom pitch. Even if ideally in the room pitch too, but those are pretty rare these days. Ladies, wear the makeup of your choice. Whatever makeup gets, again, compliments, wear that. And that's really important in the room. And it's crucial on Zoom because you're going to have lighting. It's going to wash you out. You need to look your absolute best. Why do you need to look your best? You need to look your best because if you don't look your best, they're going to say, why do you look so terrible? And they're focusing on how terrible you look. You want them to, when you look your best, they don't notice anything other than a favorable impression to you. They're not saying, wow, that really flatters her skin tone. They're just not thinking, why does she look green? You want to avoid, it's not so much as landing on the good as avoiding the bad. And looking your best is the best way to avoid the bad. Guys, and I don't know why, well, I'll tell you a quick story. Your watch matters. If you have a luxury watch, wear it. In the Zoom, you can get away with maybe something you got off eBay, but in the room, you will not get away. These people are, by and large, as a species, they're fanatical about luxury goods. They will recognize the most perfect fake. Don't give bad luck a chance. A good rule to just take with you forever: don't give bad luck a chance. So if you have a fancy watch, a luxury brand, wear it. And it might even be a talking point. So, and in person, they'll look and they'll judge you on your shoes. Make sure that they're fashionable shoes, make sure they fit well, and make sure they're in good shape, that they're shined, etc. Okay. Also in person, and also on Zoom, no hats, no sunglasses. And this doesn't matter on Zoom, but in person, zero fragrance. You don't want to find out the hard way that even if you wear the lightest possible, it's very soft, it's very subtle. But the person you're pitching to is allergic to one of the elements of your fragrance. And they sneeze throughout the entire pitch. Don't give bad luck a chance. Now, when you're pitching, there are some unforgivable mistakes. Do not do any of these. Don't be boring. We'll cover how not to be boring. Don't be confusing. We'll cover that too. Everything else you can recover gracefully from. But when the buyer is confused or the buyer is bored, or worse, confused and bored, they will not buy anything from you and will probably remember you as somebody not to take a pitch from again. Okay. When you get notes in the pitch, take them gracefully. Even if you think the notes are insane, they probably aren't. Take them gracefully. Even an insane note has a truthful point behind it. Find out what made that person, the buyer you're pitching it to, point out that I'm not really sure what that image is trying to convey, or perhaps you might use this or that in your pitch. Don't take it on board. Make a note of it. and see how you can address it so that that note doesn't come up again. Do not, do not, do not, under any circumstances whatsoever, push back during your pitch. You can say, that's that's very interesting, or never thought of it that way. If you say things like, no, Scorsese is perfectly wrong for this, you just might as well find something else to do with your life. Pushback is catastrophic to your pitch. Don't push back. And don't be the person who hears this and thinks this doesn't apply to you. If you're hearing me, this applies to you. Don't push back during the pitch. Later on, down the line, when you're in production, then, as we like to say, that's future you problems. The crazy note is a future you problem. Current you problem is selling this thing. After you sold it, then you can worry about what the note was. Now, I mentioned this at the panel. I'm going to really harp on this because it's crucial in my experience. And I use a memory device called radio controlled piloting helicopters and airplanes. And you can see the airplane and the guy piloting it. Here's his hand piloting that. Here's a little helicopter because that's all I could find on short notice. Radio reminds you of research, and control reminds you to connect. Radio is research. Research all you can about the person you'll be pitching. Bio, IMDb page, interviews, everything. Why? Because if you got a pitch meeting with somebody who prefers historical projects, you might want to lead with sort of the historical aspect about your project, even if it's not, all caps historical project. Maybe it's a romantic comedy and it's set in the 1870s, something like that. Make sure that you align whatever elements of your project you have available to you as best as possible with the interests of the person you're pitching. It'll sort of be your compass during the approach. Okay. There's also another reason, because you need to go to C, control, which means connect. You want to immediately establish a personal connection with the other person or persons. By the way, you may not just be pitching to one person, you may be pitching to two, possibly three. The third, after the second one, might be another executive, might be another producer. From three on out, you're looking at sort of assistant types generally. But that doesn't allow you, or does not give you permission to neglect the other people in the Zoom or the room. Even an assistant, after you leave, could say, I really like this thing about this project, or could say, what an idiot this guy was. Read the room, engage the room. So there are ways to connect with people. There are basically three ways to connect with people. Number one is a personal connection. Chris, I know Chris. I love Chris. Chris is great. How do you know Chris? Oh, Chris and I went to University of XYZ together. Chris and I play golf all the time. Chris and I go hang gliding. Chris and I belong to the same, chai tea Facebook page, whatever. You can, and then now you're talking, about Chris during the small talk portion of the pitch. What in the old days used to be, how bad was the traffic getting to our office when you were in LA? Back in the day, it was strictly, in person in LA. So that's the first one. Make a personal connection. You know this guy, I know this guy. You know this lady, I know that lady, etc. The other way is a genuine compliment. By the way, this is the hardest of the three, because it's very easy to come off as not genuine, even if you are. If you're telling somebody this thing that you did, this role that you, when you were acting, when you were directing, that made me want to do this, made me want to write this, etc. It's usually a good idea if the compliment, besides being genuine, and it has to be genuine. They can smell fake through lead. Okay. These guys, these people are able to spot the fake. A lot of them are very good at being fake themselves. And it takes one to know one. So be sincere and pick on something to compliment them on that is not what they usually hear. If you are Tom Hanks, you've heard everything, how great you were in Philadelphia, how great you were in Saving Private Ryan. He doesn't hear so much, I loved you in Bosom Buddies. So make it sincere and make it a little bit out of left field to really get their attention. And the last one is something unusual that we both have in common. If you were both stranded, in the same flight coming back from Indianapolis, if you were both, uh, you know, if you both had knee replacements at the same time, if you both were on at some particular event together, that's another way to do it. Piloting means passion. Be passionate about your project. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to buy a project if it's pitched by somebody who doesn't seem excited about it. If it's your project and you're not excited about it, why should I, the buyer, should be excited about it? If you don't think it's so hot, why are you asking me for money or for a green light if you cannot convince me that it's as exciting as you think it is? And for this, I want you to think of the word or the concept that opens the floodgate to your passion about the project and practice it. By the way, you're going to hear the word practice a lot. Passion electrifies your entire pitch. It makes your pitch live. It's like the Frankenstein monster. Passion is what gets that monster off the slab and walking around. If there's something that when people ask you about, oh, the story of XYZ, that gets you going, that people have to say, oh, okay, we gotta get this guy to shut up. That, channel that. That's crucial. And some examples of expressing that passion is, for example, why are you so passionate about this project? Why did you write this story? If there's a character you love most, start with that. Oh, I'm doing the story of something, and I love Eisenhower. If you have an insight into Dwight Eisenhower that nobody else has had before, lead with that. Okay. If you have a strong belief in the subject matter, this is about this particular issue, social issue that I feel very passionate about, lead with that. If you have a personal connection to the story, lead with that. If it's a World War II thing and you found your grandpa's letters to your grandma when he was 19 years old and scared out of his mind about landing at D-Day, lead with that. Whatever gets your passion going, start there. That's square one. Whatever gets your passion going is the square one of your pitch. Okay, a moment of intermission as to keep in mind, just generally speaking about your pitch, not about a specific element of the pitch. Remember your personal story, how you got here, and your connection to the project story. Those are two different stories. How did you get here, quote unquote, to be a writer, be a director, etc.? And how are you connected to the project story? Then casually slip in what I'm going to call your brand statement. In my case, I'm the guy who writes about historical footnotes. Everybody knows the story of person X. They don't know that he was the first blind person to do this, or first left-handed person to do this, that he was 2'3", whatever that may be. That leads you into your theme. It could be love, themes plural, by the way. Could be love, redemption, perseverance, whatever. Mention the series and franchise potential, and really hammer home the point of why this project has legs. Talk about how this is perfect for sequels, how this could run for X number of seasons, etc. Mention your characters. No more than 4. I remember vividly telling somebody not to pitch a project with, wait for it, 17 main characters. No more than 4. You're going to confuse somebody, and a confused person, we discussed it before, is not going to buy your project. Describe the tone of your project. Is it a dark comedy? Is it kind of an awe-inspiring sci-fi thing with new worlds, etc.? Whatever. And use comparables or comps. Harry Potter meets The Sopranos. My favorite sounding comp. and then stick to your pitch, even if it not looks like it's doing so well. A lot of executives who hear pitches all the time, and I mean all the time. We're talking 5 a day, which is 25 a week, which is 100 a month, which is 1,200 a year. They have poker faces. They have to. If you're pitching a comedy, the producers or the executives you're pitching to have to laugh. Even if with a poker face, you got to break through that poker face. Have at least 3 jokes in your back pocket. Jokes related to the pitch, the situation, the industry, the particular project. Make them laugh. Which leads to focus more on dazzling the whole room. Even if they're not into that particular project, they'll remember you and call you back later, or they might even ask you on the spot, so, what else are you working on? And you might say, well, I have this other thing. And I know specifically of 2 major showrunners who went in, dazzled them. They didn't buy what they wanted to sell them. And they almost bought the throwaway. Well, it's a thing about a guy who's and they bought it. Okay. Have small props available. Not like, excuse me while I wheel this over here, but if you have, pictures of, your grandfather doing something in World War II, or, an aunt doing something during the Civil Rights days. If you have something that I used this thing when I was, stranded in a desert island, that brings the story and your connection to it alive to the buyer that you're pitching to. Another one of these important things is do not, under any circumstances, read your pitch. Do not read your pitch. Even if in Zoom, you know what, I'm going to put sticky notes. You can put little keywords there with, things like, the helicopter or the surfboard to trigger a memory, but do not, even unless you've been working with teleprompters all your life, and even then, you're going to sound canned. And you're going to turn them off, you're going to bore them, and they're not going to buy it. And they're probably not going to buy anything else from you. Okay? Talk with your hands. Remember where the frame is, so you got to talk with your hands like here. And the guy was there, talking with your hands over here. You could be flapping away for all anybody cares. If it's off the frame, it's not going to work. And wherever possible, or feasible, use stats to bolster your pitch. If this is based on somebody who's on YouTube and has a zillion followers, that's one angle. If you have a book that you're using as your IP, intellectual property for those who are just joining us, and you want IP for your project, use it in the pitch. As I say, wave the book. I'm talking about the thing, this guy, World War II, something, 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 and here's the book that I've got the rights to this book. So it's important for them to, believe it or not, just saying, I have this book is not as important or as impressive as doing, by the way, do not send the executives, the buyers, copies of the book. They will not read it. They will not read it. And they will be angry that now they have to figure out a way to get rid of it. So don't do that. Make the buyer care, and it's up to you. Give them reasons to care. If this is not so much a technique as a reason to care. Is the market favorable timing-wise for this project? Well, we know we're not seeing a lot of multicams anymore, so this is why you see a lot of something all of a sudden, and then you don't see them for a while. Because all of a sudden, when there were no Westerns, somebody says, no, there are no Westerns. Let me go pitch a Western. And they pitch a Western, and he's or she's not the only person to think of that. And now, guess what? There are 17,000 Westerns. Okay? Is the subject matter important? Global political something, or better yet, something we haven't seen before. We haven't seen something about, I'm giving you a free one. We haven't seen a horror feature set in the Star Wars universe. Okay. Again, mention if there's IP you control for this project. A lot of times they may not be interested in a Western, a spy thing, a World War II thing, that particular company, I mean, or that particular executive. But if you have impressive IP, now we're talking. Oh, I have a New York Times bestseller. By the way, I have a New York Times bestseller that I'm pitching. Um, Mention that. Wave the book. If you've pitched this project favorably at a competing shop, production company, studio, network, whatever, mention that. Not thump your chest with it. Very low key. You just want to trigger the fear of missing out. Like, oh wow, I don't get it for my company. Somebody else is going to get it, and they're going to know that I passed on. You know, how would you like to be the person who passed on Jaws, or the person who passed on Star Wars, or the person who passed on Titanic? By the way, all those got passed on before somebody finally bought them. You don't want to be that guy. And finally, practice your pitch. As I said, a pitch is a performance. Practice it by yourself, in a mirror, whatever, until your delivery is fluid and seamless. Then, once you've got it down to fluid and seamless, where there's not a lot of well, this project is like, once you've gotten rid of all those, once you're talking perfectly fluidly about it, then to one or two friends at a time, not at a party with a million people watching, because that's not how pitches work. And if it's a Zoom one over to your friends and have them ask you tough questions, because you will be asked tough questions. The usual is why you and why now. Have answers prepared for that. Have convincing answers prepared for that. And the advantage is that if you're pitching on Zoom, it's very easy to pitch on Zoom. You can just be on the computer and you can just be talking and recording yourself, which is a bonus. And then you can evaluate, did I look away all the time? Was I always looking away? And work on the aspects of your performance that you need to work on. And now back to the memory device. Helicopters, which means hook. These days, used not to be the case, but these days, a project must have a hook. The people that you're pitching to are not creatives, it's their job, and they are really deathly afraid of taking a risk that gets them fired. So a hook minimizes the possibility of them passing on something because they're scared to get fired. And what do I mean by hook? What people don't know about a well-known person. Did you know that so-and-so was the first blind astronaut? I didn't know he was blind. He was legally blind. This astronaut was legally blind. An unexpected perspective on the subject matter. This is the story of the Vietnam War told from the standpoint of the Australian ambassador. Okay. This particular character that everybody thinks is a terrible character is actually a good character, or vice versa. Or a surprising reveal in the finale. If you watch Fleabag, you will see what I mean by that reversal. You're thinking one thing all the time, and all of a sudden, at the end, it just socks you in the face. And finally, airplane means ask. When you finish the last thing, which is the hook, the fourth step, you got to get in position for your ask. Always ask last. Notice the size of font we have here. Always ask last. And the most important thing about the ask is the phrase, would you be willing to? And not would you like to, they don't like to. Would you want it? They don't want to. Phrase it like this. And short version is this phrasing is there for a reason. So use, would you be willing to take a longer meeting, take a formal meeting, take a pitch meeting about this project? Would you be willing to read the script? Would you be willing to look at the deck? Would you be willing to introduce me to somebody who would be the right fit in case they're passing on it because you're pitching a multicam comedy over at a place that does horror, because that's the only person in the industry that you know. Would you be willing to intro me to the person who would be the right fit? Would you be willing to get direct email from me? A lot of people might not. And the two sort of takeaways or leave behinds are, what's the best way to keep you updated? And finally, thank you for your time. They didn't have to take this pitch. They didn't have to listen to you for an elevator ride. thank you for your time. This is a business that runs on protocol and politeness. If you see two important people, do not barge in between them to quote unquote soft pitch your project. It's not a soft pitch and it's not going to be taken well. I hope this helped. If you have any emails, feel free to send us an email at communications@chemical.org. Thank you for your time, and I'll catch you at the next webinar.